was passed as of late last night. I think it was a 9 p.m. vote within Congress that moved forward the S510 legislation, which is certainly the FDA's new initiative on food safety, actually the government's new initiative on food safety. So we certainly think it's fortuitously timed. We've been planning to do this event for some time, and as you can see here, it is the third in a series of events that we have titled Maintaining or Sustaining Profitability and Customer Service in the Food and Beverage Industry. Sometimes those two things are rather difficult to do, especially in today's day and age, and the recent legislation has certainly had a significant impact to that. So today's subtopic, building supply chain safety and customer value through technology. As a technology firm, it's certainly something that we take to heart very seriously, but hopefully you'll find today's session to be very informative, not just about technology, but to give you principled information and facts about how to navigate these uncertain times with respect to food safety. Let's see if we can get this to cooperate with us and move ahead. Luck would have it. There we go. Sometimes we've got to prompt it a little bit. As I mentioned, this is our third presentation devoted to helping strategically middle market organizations. Large-scale organizations certainly have the resources, the wherewithal, and the guidance to be able to move through these particular issues quite easily. But we certainly want to continue to be, as we have been for the past 20 years, a resource for all of our organizations and clients that we're coming in contact with. And the focus today is to help you mitigate some of the business risk that is associated to being in the food and related industries today, and certainly to use that as an ability to enhance your competitive advantages. And that's really the central theme of all of the presentations that we make, is really surrounding those two topics. How do I continue ongoing operations cost efficiently, and how do I leverage that to a strategic business advantage? So hopefully today's session will get you there. In terms of the agenda, we'll give you a brief introduction to who MyBar is. Many of you in attendance are familiar with our organization, and many not. We certainly like to position ourselves not only with software and services leadership, but certainly thought leadership as it pertains to conveying information to our client base and help keeping you informed. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on S510 Food Safety Modernization Act and really what it means to your business. How it's going to impact your day in, day out existence. And from what I have been reading and through all indications, it certainly will significantly impact your business. We'll focus on some of the key points of the legislation, and we'll focus in on some summary points of strategic examples of what you can do to help mitigate some of the uncertainty that's caused by this particular legislation. We're also going to look to what are the impacts to your operations, because they are and will be significant. We're going to focus on what the impact is to your customers, and even beyond that, how you're dealing with your customers, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away with some tangible information on what you can do to protect your business and maintain significant ongoing operations. So that's today's agenda. Running time should be about 30 minutes, give or take, and certainly allowing time for questions, but we'll certainly want to move through the material. There will be some opportunity for you to get this later on through written form, and we're going to set up some website resources for you to be able to download some information. So thank you again for attending. MyBar, as I mentioned, has been helping the tri-state food and beverage distribution business for the past 20 years. With our group, we probably have no less than several hundred years of experience in working in the food and beverage industry, and we're not just exclusive there. We work in all forms of distribution and manufacturing, and I think that insight certainly helps significantly to just look beyond the traditional F&B marketplace. We've also worked very closely with Microsoft through this series. As I mentioned, this is the third in the series. We've given this presentation up at Microsoft corporate offices and at some of their conventions and meetings to some great reception. But Microsoft has certainly helped to develop the software and tools that you can employ, and will continue to put out information so that you can turn to them as a resource and, again, how to navigate these particular issues. And in culling this together, we did a tremendous number of interviews with some of our existing clients who are very much up to speed on compliance because they're dealing in the consumer retail space. They're dealing with supermarket chains and mass merchandisers who for years have put a tremendous emphasis on safety throughout the supply chain. So we're going to share with you some of their insights and some industry leaders, both in the insurance industry and outside, that can, I think, shed some valuable insight to this whole process. This rather amusing little picture that's presented up on the screen might describe some of us, all of us, and it can mean a couple of different things. It could mean I started to read about S510 and thinking about food safety, and it scares the heck out of me. Or the converse of that is I really don't think it's going to impact my business at all, and I'm going to kind of ignore this, and hopefully it'll go away. And I've kind of been skating by for all of these years and haven't really worried much about food safety in the supply chain, thinking it's the other guy's problem. It's my end user's problem, or it's the person I've purchased the merchandise from. It's their problem, not necessarily my problem, but certainly hiding in a shell isn't going to help anyone, and this legislation is kind of far-reaching. So if that strikes a nerve, I'm glad, because I think it's something we all need to be aware of. I bring this particular quote to the screen from Richard Shanks, who is at Aon, which is certainly one of the world's largest insurers within business, and I'll just give you a moment to digest it. But he's talking about the devastating impact on a company's reputation, profitability, and customer loyalty and retention that a food recall can have on a business. And of course, you know, insurance companies having teams of actuaries, they study this stuff. And they write policies on this stuff, and they write policies to make money. And right now, they're having some real difficulty pricing these policies and having some difficulty putting it out there. And most general liability packages and coverages do not cover for recall or the associated consequential damages that are associated to recall. So one of the things that we point out is that it's worthy of note. I think it's something that you should explore both with your general counsel and explore with your insurance brokers themselves to see what kind of protection can be afforded to you. And with or without that, we're certainly going to need to take particular measures. And what they really focused on is that business owners must continually assess the risk exposures and develop extensive risk strategies to ensure that they're prepared for these unexpected events. And that really speaks right to the language of the legislation. We're going to look at some of the passages of that. I won't make it too boring, try to keep it as high level as we can, but that certainly is very much in line with the expectations of what the new legislation brings to the table. What Mr. Shanks is really saying is that there's a flywheel that's created, both positively and negatively associated to food safety. So if we've developed the right kind of initiatives internally, well, we can position that as a strategic advantage. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We can position that to help grease the growth engine of our organization. Conversely, if we're not taking those steps, if we're not undertaking the right risk mitigation practices, then certainly we can get that flywheel spinning against us, and as was pointed out in the previous slide, it can be quite devastating. So you have to think about that not just in the context of food safety and, you know, what everybody thinks about is tracing and traceability, but it certainly goes far beyond that through marketing and merchandising and supply chain partnering that can help you to mitigate some of these risks and get this flywheel moving in the right direction for you. We then went out and we interviewed and we looked at a lot of the clients and some experts in the industry and found out what are some of the challenges that food safety legislation or just kind of dealing with food safety is causing within a business. And certainly at the top of the list, which was kind of unusual, I thought it would be cost-related, had to do with competition and the fact that large-scale distribution businesses, large-scale food production organizations and such are working only with those organizations who have stringent policies, guidelines, documented policies and guidelines in place. So the competition that food safety is bringing to the table is quite high in that you've had several successful niche relationships for however many years you've been in business, and that could potentially be put at risk simply because somebody else is in their ear talking to them about that. So I think it's important to note that and to certainly try to take some positive action there relative to competition and how you're positioning yourself. The next one that they cited is certainly just the act of compliance in food safety in general and the processes that an internal organization needs to go through, not even so much talking about the expense associated to it, but just even having the time to focus on it. Most businesses have gotten through the last couple of years trying to do more with less, and as a result finding it very difficult to carve out the necessary resources to do this, to really allocate the time to have people be a compliance officer or a food safety officer, which is some of the suggestions that we've been reading in the literature that are being made. So certainly profitability being impacted by someone's ability to just simply focus on the daunting tasks that are at hand. Next one, not sure it's totally related to food safety, but it has to do with shrinking product margins, and I think that kind of dovetails with the influx of imported goods and cheap substitute alternatives. Certainly a challenge I think can be mitigated, and certainly one of the things that this act is going to do is certainly going to put responsible suppliers in the forefront of the consumer's minds. So hopefully the act of staying in compliance will mitigate the shrinking product margins that are being noted as a challenge. And I think what they're talking about, if you look at the direct costs associated to the transportation logging, the tracking of the inbound merchandising, no longer is it enough to check that receiving document against the purchase order and just verify that we got the right amount of pounds or kilograms of flour or any ingredients received that was ordered. But it's also going the extra mile and capturing the additional data points that are required to, provide, good traceability. So those costs certainly affect product margins. Higher operating expenses, I think that's kind of all subsumed within compliance and shrinking margins, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. And higher customer expectations, certainly a key one. To a member, any of the businesses that we've been talking to, their customers are starting to demand more. It started what we saw with country of origin labeling. It started with certain government reporting out of the USDA, and now it's extending. And I think that the recent press awareness associated to the spinach recall, peanut butter recalls, and the countless others. If you ever want to get a dose of reality, just go to the FDA.gov site and take a look at the multitude of recalls that are listed there. It's pretty staggering. But the customers now, as a result, have an expectation that you're going to be a responsible provider within the supply chain. Certainly a challenge that's going to affect your profitability. And, of course, something near and dear to our heart is technology. And like most initiatives, implementing technology to help facilitate the proper tracking of the inbound merchandise and the food traceability obviously has an expense associated to it. Can your old systems be retrofitted to do it? Does it require a new investment? And like any other new investment, yeah, we want lot traceability, but it's so endemic, it's so intertwined in all other parts of your business processing that it's kind of hard just to excise that one little piece out. So they did cite technology as certainly a challenge that can affect profitability. We certainly like to look at it as something that can certainly enhance profitability, which we all know it can, but in the context of this discussion, certainly a significant cost. So I figured I would depict the list slightly differently as, food safety being the center of the universe, and we have all of these issues, competition, compliance, technology, customer demands kind of orbiting or obscuring our ability to effectively manage the food supply chain that we're dealing with. But that's certainly a better look, and no wonder we had so many people in attendance today. Just giving you some background by the numbers, in 2010 there were 84 major recalls of product. As I mentioned on the FDA site, tons more. But the projections for 2011 will be 3 times the current level as enforcement is being stepped up, as the administration begins to put staff or feet on the ground in order to support this legislation, which, make no mistake about it, will be a growth in government, will be a growth in a government agency, whether for the good or not. It's certainly going to mean there's going to be more recalls and more inspections that are going to take place. And fines are expected to increase significantly as a result of it. And we're going to get into some of the details of what some of the powers are. But